Hi, my name's Drew, and this is the first video, I hope, of more. I'm going to start, doing videos that talk about, um, chronic pain. A lot of them will probably be about my journey with chronic pain, but I also hope to bring in other people that I know, who have, who deal with chronic pain on a daily basis, and and how they are able to find joy and still have a meaningful life despite having chronic pain. Um, so the first video I wanted to just talk about my story and what happened and what has brought me to this point. Um, for me, it happened. I was 27 when I slipped two, almost 3 discs in my back, and I was living in California, San Francisco, and I moved out there by myself, and had been living there for 6 years, and was doing, fairly well. But I had recently lost 100 pounds, and was really active and running and doing all sorts of things that I didn't used to do when I was heavier. And I was running out onto a field for a flag football game, and felt a twinge in my back and then pain going down my leg. And so I've had back problems before, but this was really a different feeling. It just didn't let up, and never had pain down my leg before. And when I went to the doctor, they seemed more concerned about that. And they did an MRI, and that's when they saw that I had the disc issue. And I tried some PT. It was they didn't actually have me doing any exercises. They had me doing very minimal. It was just I'm looking back, the intervention was not the best, but I didn't know much at that time, and not as much as I know now. But and then they also did a couple injections, cortisone injections, and nothing, that didn't help. And so I can't remember how long it took, but then they referred me to a surgeon, and the surgeon was like, and this was probably the point that things shifted, and he was like, "You have the back of a 60-year-old," and I was 27, and then nothing scares you more than hearing something like that from a doctor, and so he said, if you don't get surgery now, you're going to need it eventually. So I decided to go ahead with the surgery, and that I was going to move back home to Maine to recover, and I needed to be near my family because everybody was here in Maine. So I set up the surgery. My mom and dad both were all coming out to be with me during my recovery. And so yeah, I was gonna, supposed to be helpful, and could come back and start recovering. And it didn't work out that way, unfortunately. The surgery went okay, and then 2 or 3 days after, I started feeling really awful. I started having these horrible headaches when I was standing up. It felt like my brain was getting ripped out, and it was I ended up going to the ER. It took forever for them to admit me because they didn't know what was going on. And it then again took a really long time for them to realize that I had a leak in my dura. So they had nicked my dura during the surgery, and I had a leak, and so I was getting the cerebral spinal headaches, which really do one of the worst pains I've ever had. And so if I was upright, I would get the pain and then I would throw up. So they were like, so basically you just need to be bedridden, it should heal itself. But what started happening is that the spinal fluid started to build up in my scar to the point that it was like I couldn't lay on it because it started to get to the point where it was almost the size of a softball. And we went in, my dad drove me in, and they drained it, and it was a pint of spinal fluid. It was how much it had built up. And we went home, and I was still having these headaches every time I was upright, so I'm flying flat this whole time. That night I started to feel horrible neck pain. Just sore and pain all over, and nothing that we had could help it. And they told my dad to call the ambulance, and so I went in, and they discovered that I had bacterial meningitis in my spinal fluid. And then also, I don't remember which happened first, but my scar opened up and started leaking. So that was a big mess. So they had to do a emergency surgery to go in and clean it up and reclose it. And then I got a PICC line, and had to be on antibiotics for a long time with a CAD pump. So it was going all the time. And so finally that took a while to recover from, but I was still on track for moving home. But I was, again, a little bit of a setback. And it's 3 weeks, and I'm walking every day, just trying to be mobile, what they tell you to do, just to get up and move and start being active. And it's the first night that I was alone, because I had such amazing support. My friend Amy that I knew from college came out and spent a week with me, and this family that I used to work with, who are now really good friends, Lynn and her daughter Lanny, who I worked with when she was little, stayed with me for many days. So it was the first night I was alone. I started to feel really sick again, and had to call the ambulance. And they came, and I don't remember the next couple weeks. I was so sick, but then I guess the infection was back. There's a lot of things that happened. Like, I started getting, before I went back into the ER, I started getting an infection in my scar, and I was like getting concerned, and they were like, you're fine, don't worry about it. And then I got really sick again. There was a lot of things that they just weren't really on top of. And so anyways, I'm in the ER. This next stint was like 5 weeks. And I was just really sick, and the headaches were back. The leak was back, and they had to do another surgery. And they put a spinal drain in, to try to help siphon off fluid so that the leak would heal. But that drain didn't work, and the surgeon didn't try to fix it for about a week. It just didn't work for a week, and he didn't give a shit. Or I don't know what it was that happened, but so my poor parents had to fly out for the third time, and they've got this certain neurosurgeon off my case and got somebody else, and then actually got somebody else until we got this woman neurosurgeon who actually seemed to know what she was doing. They put in another drain, which was one of the worst pain, another horrible pain, because I was awake for it, and felt like they were stabbing me in my, where the infected area was. So I just remember I was screaming at them, and I was gonna fucking kill them, things like that. They put the drain in, it worked, but then it didn't actually fix the problem. I was still not able to stand up without feeling the headache and throwing up immediately. Then they were, like, well, the next thing is that we're going to have to do put a shunt in the head, which I have here. I keep my hair long now because it's this bump. But they, basically they were like, we think that she now has hydrocephalus from the meningitis, so she creates too much spinal fluid, so the leak won't heal, and so they, the last surgery they did on me, which this is for, was to open up the scar again, clean it out, and then also put in the shunt and the tube. And so that was really painful, that recovery, because they they had to shave my hair, but instead of just shaving all of my head, which would have been really nice, they just shaved part of it. So I had a poof here and then half here. I mean, it's like the dignity that they just take it away from you. But anyway, they did for me. So I had that haircut for, I think, a week. So finally, it worked. I could sit up for the first time in 5 weeks and not throw up and not feel like my brain was getting ripped out. And so great. I was able to start the process to go home, and luckily, I mean, at this point I didn't have an apartment anymore, so I have a really good friend who was my boss, who let me put the hospital bed in her pool house, and my dad stayed with me, and that's where I recovered for another week, I think, before we flew home. And another amazing thing that happened is that one of the families that I worked with donated money to get me a first-class ticket home, which was incredible, because it would have been very uncomfortable flying in coach. It was uncomfortable in first class, so. But anyway, so we should I get home and start recovering. I've been on a lot of pain medication for a while. They, back when I first got slip disc, they put me on Vicodin. In California, they have very different laws than here and regulations than in Maine. They would refill it, and they gave you double the amount that they give you here. And they just kept throwing drugs at me in the hospital. So, but when I got here, it was a different story. And I was also really traumatized, and so the transition back was not easy for me. And I was also going from living by myself, working full time, being on my own, to living with my dad and his partner, not working, and being in pain a lot all day. So it was not a good transition back, and I didn't do it very well. I was not positive about it, and I struggled. And they pretty quickly took Vicodin away from me because I misused it. Because I was used to higher doses, whatever. I made up a lot of excuses about it, but I was using it to try to. At that point, I don't think it was a problem. I think I was just trying to I was in a lot of pain and trying to not feel pain, which, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I what started happening a couple months in is I started getting this horrible pain in my left butt cheek, and it would go down my leg, and it got to the point where I couldn't sit for more than 10 minutes without having to lay down, and it really affected my ability to do anything. I mean, you can't go out to eat, because I would go out to, we'd try to go out to eat, and then I'd have to get it to go because I couldn't sit anymore. Couldn't go to a movie. Just going to have a cup of coffee with someone was not easy. I just spent my time sitting up for 10 minutes and laying down. And that was really difficult. And it took a while for me to get into with the pain doctors that I worked with for a while, and I just kept asking for medication, because that's really all I knew what to do was, well, you got to have a medication that's going to help me. And they finally put me on, at one point I was on OxyContin, oxycodone, tizanidine, which is a muscle relaxant, Klonopin, which is an anti-anxiety medication, Cymbalta, which is for anti-anxiety and depression, and I was on medication for blood pressure because my blood pressure was really high, and I think that was it. There was one point that I don't know how I even functioned, but my life became really small, and I just started to also gain weight back. My eating started to get really out of control, and I started to isolate more and more too. And then I also did some weird, extraordinary things. Now that I look back at it, like, as I decided I was going to go to grad school, because I was like, all right, I need to be able to get a job where I can work less hours and make more money. And I wanted to, so I had these moments and these ideas of just wanting to continue to have meaning, but that to me was, I don't know how that happened, but it did. So I applied to Antioch University in New England, and to the Marriage and Family Therapy program, and I got in, and I don't know how I have no idea. I was on a lot of medication during that time. I was misusing it. I would go to class, and I would sit, and then I would lay down in the back of the class. I don't know how I didn't fall asleep for most of the time, because I was on a lot of medication, and when I would have to do papers, it would be hard for me to sit for a long time, so I would have to alternate between sitting and laying down, and sitting and laying down. I mean, at the time, it's just like, you do what you have to do, and I know a lot of people with chronic pain just have to do what they have to do. That whole time, I was just so miserable. And I was also eating, there was a time period where I was doing Weight Watchers, and I sort of ate okay, but still not really healthy. And all through this time, I've seen 20 to 30 different body work people, or doctors, or I saw gentle chiropractor, massage people, acupuncture, some weird person who did some sonar thing. I mean, spent thousands of dollars, and nothing. Nothing helped, and some things hurt more. made things hurt worse. And I, at one point, just stopped seeing, and I couldn't stand the thought of having anybody touch me anymore. And I stopped trusting doctors. I stopped trusting that anybody could help me. That they knew what they were doing. I mean, at the hospital, there was a lot of people that didn't seem to know what they were doing. And I've heard other stories where people, where doctors sort of just don't realize the effect that they can have on people's lives. And and not to say that it was personal, like were doing it to me on purpose, but it's really changed my whole life in a lot of ways, obviously. But anyway, so there was a long period of time where I just was like, I can't stand helpers. I mean, I think I still saw a therapist because I was fucking crazy, but I knew that I just couldn't be touched. But so somehow I got through grad school, and I did an autism certificate program, and I met really amazing people in those programs, and I'm still friends with them, and so still able to be social, even though I was, in a lot of pain. But when I moved back to Portland after grad school, that's when I really started to isolate and to go into I don't know, just started to isolate. I finished my internship here for grad school, but at that point I was really struggling with the narcotics that they had me on. I was misusing it and running out early, and then being frantic and lying and manipulating and doing whatever I could to get more. I lied to the pharmacist, I lied to the doctors, I lied to my family, I was always in fear about if I run out of pain meds, I will die pretty much, because this pain is just too much. And it was basically, if I didn't, my whole life became about pain medication and pain, and that was it. And food. Can't forget food. But I don't know, there was one time that I ran out of medication early, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. It is making me, it's gonna kill me. And I decided I had to get honest about it and go off of it, and was able to. I did it. I smoked pot, which helped with going off of it. Which whatever helps. That to me seems lesser than narcotics. So I was able to get off OxyContin first, and then oxycodone, and I didn't die, which was great. But it was really hard, and I think that the thing that was so hard is that I just didn't have any other tools. People would say, well, maybe if you meditated, or if you exercise helps, but it's just like, when I would be in these states of just complete fear and fear of pain, fear of more pain, and when I'm in that, I can't get out of my own way, and it's like, you go fucking meditate when you feel like that. But I wasn't able to do anything differently until I was, and there's nothing else I can't explain it other than that. But I was able to. I'm so grateful because I know there's a lot of people struggling with it, and there's some people that have absolutely no problem with it, and that helps them have a bigger life and helps them manage their pain, and that's amazing. But it does not work for me. So I and at this point, my pain is still. It was still really horrible, but I was able to do more. I could actually sit through a meal and almost make it through a whole movie. I had a little bit more tolerance of things. So I'm trying to think how much time. See, I wanted to make these a little bit shorter because I know for me I have a short attention span. So I kind of want to. Maybe I'll go to 30 minutes and then I'm gonna stop it, and then I'll continue the story. But anyway, so then what the big shift for me was that I've always struggled with weight, and at this point I was at 370 pounds. My brother's wedding was probably my heaviest. I can't. The pictures are just. I look like 3 people. I was eating mostly sugar and flour and cake and fast food and drinking diet soda, ironically, because the sugar would be bad for me. But I at some point was like, I need to get some help around this, and I can't do Weight Watchers again. And that's when I got my friend Heather was like, what about Overeaters Anonymous? And I had gone to it when I was in San Francisco when I was 22 or something, and I was like, these people are crazy. I don't do shit like this with food. And I didn't when I was 22, but I was doing stuff with food then later, back 2000, I can't remember when. It's been 3 years, 2014. I was hiding food and eating double meals and getting it out of the garbage, things like that. So I was one of those people now, and for some reason I was willing to go try it out, and that was and this has to do with pain because it has absolutely impacted me in a positive way. I went to a meeting and it had really met some amazing people that have helped change my life, and I've lost 155 pounds. Which is great, but I also have a completely different perspective on life, which positively impacts my relationship with pain and my willingness to be in pain. So I think that, the next videos that I want to do are to talk about what I do with pain now, because really my life is so much better now, and I'm still in pain every day. I've just recently had 2 weeks where I had a headache every day. Yesterday was the first day that I didn't have a headache the full day. And today, so far, it's 1:30. I still haven't had one. So it may be 2 days in a row without one. And I can still smile and laugh and be grateful for things, which, even on good days back then, I couldn't be grateful. So there's been a huge shift for me. And I kind of I just know that for me, hearing people's stories, their experience and their strength, um, has always been an inspiration for me. It's been helpful. And if I can be helpful to somebody, then I know that that is helpful for me. Um, and I hope to bring in other people with different experiences too to talk about their journey. Because I'm part of a Living Well program at Mercy Hospital here in Portland, Maine, and it's run by Dr. Stephen Hull. And there's some people that I go to an alumni group, and they are all struggling with the same things, different but same, and they're all working really hard to find meaningful lives, and I think it's important to share those stories too. So that's my goal with this video series of whatever it becomes. Yeah, so I hope you got through this very long-winded story, and that you will stay tuned for more. And I hope you have a good day. Thanks.